right, so welcome back to Travel Tech Talks. My name is Jess, and for joining me for this episode of this podcast, we have none other than Darrin Grafton, our very own CEO and founder of Serko. Thank you so much for joining us today, Darrin.
Thank you, Jess. It's exciting to be here.
Yeah, we're really keen to get some of your thought leadership this episode on business travel trends and future of Zeno. I wonder, so for anybody who's out there that, perhaps been living under a rock or is not aware of our brand or who we are and what we do, could you give us a little bit of an overview about what is Zeno?
So Zeno is fundamentally a platform for travel and expense, and it's designed to cater for all of the kind of parts of travel that get touched through that. So whether it's done online or actually done offline, we manage the workflows, the approvals, and the booking and the changeability right the way through, no matter what type of person plays in that ecosystem of travel. And, we're doing the booking, the EA's managing the booking, so we're bringing that through. We're bringing the approvals through. We're putting the information into the travel management systems and the ecosystem to make sure everything is automated, it's reported, and all of that information is flowed together. And we put a bit of AI around it, and we kind of simplify and make it personal. So we actually distill and we connect all of that world's content together under a single platform. We put a policy around it and a series of rules to really distill all of that information and choice into what's actually logical for what you're about to do. And that's kind of the simplest way, is to say, hey, you might be an employee and you can fly domestically this way, and if you're in an exec or something or you're going on a long flight over 7 hours, then you might be able to go premium economy or business. And we expose the right content at the right time. And our unique ability inside Zeno is to understand how all of that fits together under a single purchasing model. And that's the power of Zeno. The power of Zeno is that we actually truly save money when people use it because of the way that we actually do that design.
Awesome. We've spoken a little bit about how authorisers might use our platform for that authorisation process, and I think in a couple of other episodes we'll really get into some of the nuances of the Zeno platform. I guess for somebody like me who's been here at Serko for 9 years now, the question of how did it all begin? You and Bob Shaw starting Serko back in the 80s.
Yeah, so it's been an iteration of passion for travel. So that's the only thing I've ever done. So my first job was building travel technology, and back in that day it was building accounting systems and travel front-end systems to the global distribution systems, and challenging the status. And so for us it was an ability to look at an industry that seemed really backwards, that it didn't have a lot of automation, and we were like, we can do so much. And so I think we set up Serko, where the original company was Interactive Technologies, to innovate and to have that DNA, and that team's carried forward into Serko to today. And it's kind of that part of challenging, kind of removing friction and complexity in travel and trying to make it simpler and a little bit of quirky and fun at the same time, which is what the Zeno brand is, a little bit of a challenger, because we want to challenge the norm of how travel's done and actually do it a bit different and say that we can make it better, friendlier, easier, and less stressful and stuff like that. So it's kind of been multiple iterations over kind of that journey from the 80s and starting out in travel. So it's exciting though.
Yeah, it's exciting to see what's to come as well. I know, even sort of that jump from, Serko Online, where when I started in the company through to Zeno, it's just, leaps and bounds. It's just such a positive change. And I think there's a lot of a really positive reception to the Zeno product now. I think, even just sort of seeing how it's been iterated over the last even 7 years is just mind-blowing.
Yeah, I mean, when we put Zeno in place, it was about, I said to the team, Serko Online, as we know, down across Australasia was the number one platform. And I said to everybody, let's build the thing that's going to destroy our company.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, well, why would you do that? Why would you take something that's already dominant and build another product that's going to destroy it? Because if we don't, someone else will.
Totally.
And it's that mindset of saying it's never good enough. We can do better. We can do more things that makes it exciting to be part of.
Yeah.
How do we kind of get to this next market? How do we globalize it? How do we shift the industry? And that's kind of the fundamental DNA of Zeno is it will keep evolving to that industry and to the new parts and new opportunities.
Yeah, for sure. Just before we came on air, I got a couple of stats here that I just wanted to share because I think it's telling quite a positive, uplift, particularly post-pandemic. So the stats out of GBTA are reporting that global travel is expected to recover to pre-pandemic totals, which is 1.4 trillion in 2024. And then continue to escalate up to 1.8 trillion by 2027.
Yeah.
So that's a really, I guess, positive outlook for us, for you. Like thinking about that and that, that aspiration or that anticipated 1.8 trillion. What kind of key highlights or things are you looking forward to as we sort of gear up and expand?
I think the great thing about COVID in a way was that there was a lot of investment that went into technology frameworks and the shift to NDC and the shift to a lot of automation for the future. It's still going through kind of that infancy of becoming normality to get into a framework that it actually works really well behind the scenes. But the evolution of technology to remove stress out of travel, so disruption is what everyone hates, and in business travel, almost at least a third of all bookings change. And so we're going to see through the supply source and through the opportunity, technology advancements that's really going to remove a lot of friction out of travel. And I think that's one of the most exciting things because, I went from doing 120 flights in 2019 and having a third of those disrupted. And it's a lot of time on a plane, a lot of disruption and a lot of pain point. And so my goal with what we do for Serko is really simple. Build the technology that means I can leave home and come home and have technology manage that journey for me. And so I forget about the technology and I enjoy the experience of business travel, the connections and how we bring people together. And our job is to build the tech that enables that 1.4 to 1.8 trillion to be done so much better. And that is really what everybody that turns up at Serko to do. And I think the most compelling part is our people are so passionate about the customer and the opportunity ahead, and that's what makes us really, really special. We produced phenomenal innovation, but that comes from our ability to listen, hear from the customer, to engage with them, and then actually drive those sort of outcomes. And I think that's what makes Serko, and has always made Serko, quite unique.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely. Yeah. I think our culture is something to really be celebrated. And you're right, everybody shows up every day passionate about like what customer problem that they're solving, So I guess something you mentioned about, not with technology, I think on the flip reversal of that with the pandemic, we did see other tech that, comes into play, like the Zoom and Teams meetings and things like that sort of replace that face-to-face interaction. And that's kind of become, I guess, our new normal. What is, in your opinion, and you've sort of touched on a little bit, like the value of that face-to-face connection, that technology can't replace?
Yeah, it's kind of that special part of that coffee or that lunch meeting or that conversation at the end of the meeting. And technology creates a dimension that's quite flat, and you don't know whether the person, especially in a meeting, is fully engaged, and you can't read body language and you can't read the intent in a lot of cases. And I know there's been a lot of advancements in these platforms, but I always found it incredibly, inspiring when you see, as soon as the pandemic in New Zealand stopped and we could travel, one of the first countries in the world, I was out at the airport and I was sitting there and there was two people beside me at the counter, and one goes, "Why are you here?" And he was going down to see his customer in Wellington. and the other customer had been to Christchurch, and they'd both were visiting actually each other's customers at the same time.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And they were both surprised to see both of them traveling.
Yeah, you're like,
And
what are you doing here?
They knew that if they were in person visiting them, how important that was, rather than just connecting via a Zoom call or a Teams call. And it's that inspiration that people have to create connections, true connections, and people buy from great people, from what they believe in and what that person stands for, that company stands for. And so I think being in person and representing your brand and what you're about is incredibly powerful, and being there in the moment. And that's what we sort of say, is that the most amazing things happen through those connections. And we've built lifetime connections. And if we look at how we operate with Flight Centre or Orbit or any of our customers, and then Booking.com, we're always connecting. And those relationships form and create those incredible strengths of partnerships as well.
Yeah, it's true. And I guess an example of that I can think of, as you know, we have our customer advisory group that we host, biannually.
Yeah.
It's an opportunity for us to get, travel procurement, travel buyers in a room where we can, it's basically like peer networking, and it's an opportunity for them to come in, meet with the team, meet with some of our execs, some of our product team, and some of our partnership development teams as well. And through that experience, it's an opportunity for them to share, concerns or problem solve, and which they wouldn't have otherwise done had they not all been put in a room together,
Correct.
met with each other. And by the end of these advisory groups, you've got people sharing details and saying, oh, that problem that you're solving about virtual payments, I'd really like to get your ideas on that. And then there's, and the feedback that we get after those advisory groups is, thank you so much for putting us together. And coming together face to face, and it's it's hugs all round. I'm meeting customers that I've spoken to, like you said, on Teams or Zoom for years, but you finally see them in person, and there's an immediate trust and connection because you get to see them face to face.
And it's no different to like the examples of bringing people together. It's like bringing our team together to work collaboratively. It's everything like the community days and standing true to your brand and actually turning up into the communities and actually helping people. And when they bring people together to help their communities, and we can bring our people with them, all of these things and forming connections and doing good and actually forming these relationships are so important. And it's a really cool purpose to have. And it's the difference between a flat two-dimensional technology story and something that's actually making true human connections and differences out there. And I think that's something...
It's so powerful, right? Nothing replaces it.
And it doesn't stop that two-dimensional thing. It has a service to have. Sure. And a lot of times our teams, we know we'll connect in and do these sort of things because we can't be there in person all the time. But you use it as a tool to drive the different types of outcomes. And so the true outcomes of connecting and stuff like that, you're doing in person and you're doing these types of things. So, and then new travel happens. The more part we're remote, the more times we have to connect on culture and connect together, which means new forms of business travel have now happened. We've got teams that are remote. They now come in for long stay or rent an apartment and come in and connect with the team for 2 weeks.
Come in for a podcast.
That's right. And so these things, this is just the new way of working. And so that's also created a whole new business travel, commercial premise. If you look at it, people aren't always in the office. And, that's meant that you can have, double the amount of team in half the office space because you can connect differently, and you put that into your people and you put that into the byproduct of that is travel, to connect them all together and to do smaller events and to do more connections and that. So it's
I mentioned about our advisory group and just before, and one of the topics that came out of that day, there was a couple of different things that we discussed, but probably the number one item that was front of everybody's mind, and it was quite exciting. You could really see the difference between those in the know and those who were sort of just trying to get their head around it, was the topic of AI and artificial intelligence. And I think maybe for anybody who is starting out, or just wanting like a high level explanation, if you can, if that's even possible, like what is AI?
It's quite interesting. It's probably one of my passions, because when I was at Tech in the early days, my thesis paper was on computers that can think,
Oh,
and
really?
cybernetics.
Wow.
And it was on, back then, the most advancement in the 80s was actually a chess game where you could play against a chess game.
Remember that, yeah.
And you thought that this was great.
Revolutionary.
And I look back at that paper, what we're writing about could be the future, and we see things like ChatGPT. And I've played around with it. So AI is, it's basically algorithms that you're training on. So it's where AI is dangerous is that if you feed it the wrong information, it will feed that back. And so, the ability to know which is right and which is wrong is still some of that human element of where people can actually make a difference on overlaying AI. But AI, we've played around a lot with it at Serko. Of course, we've done it so that we've created personalization in Zeno, and then we've also done the world's first digital human consultant that you could talk to make a booking. And then recently,
at GBTA,
and then at GBTA this year, we did another one which you could actually have a true conversational AI as ChatGPT's come out. So for what really AI is this ability to take a view over data and bring about a real conversational aspect about how to pull the parts together to really save time. So what AI is really being used for is to do a lot of the things that humans would do that take a long time to do, and to automate it and simplify it. So in its basic form, it's taking repetitive tasks that a human would do and automate them, either via algorithms or through insights that it's learning and it's been trained on.
And on that, I guess when you think about business travel in general, like where do you see space for AI in supporting, some of those tasks that might be, I don't want to say mundane, but could be automated through AI?
Yeah, and so if you think about today's stress and travel, one, personalization is key. So the fundamental part of personalization, looking at the data, when you think about corporate travel specifically, we operate in a very defined policy or program. So AI can operate very, very easily because we have a preference and a digital footprint. So it's going to make a huge impact to how we buy travel. But the biggest impact that we can have is around the stress that is caused through travel. So if I'm on a flight to LA and I've got a connecting flight, the AI algorithm should be able to detect that through flight stats, should be able to see that my plane's going to be late. It should work out that the time inside the airport is not going to mean that I will likely make that outcome. It should check, is my meeting important? If I do, can I get me onto that next flight and step through and actually make that decision for me? In the first instance, deliver that to an EA or deliver that back to a person to make a decision and then automate that decision in the future. And so AI should be able to take the step ahead of the change and disruption and work out the process before and through that actually make the stress removed. So if my flight's delayed, it should be the first system that actually gets me onto the right flight rather than me having to walk up to the airline counter and do all these types of things. So I think that's where I see a huge benefit of AI coming into play.
And on that note, I guess when you think of, our, travel and expense ecosystem, are they the type of, I guess, innovations where you see us being able to streamline?
Correct. And it's streamlining, so why do you need to fill in an expense? So the part...
I sort of doing expenses this morning, I can tell you. Any AI that can help with that,
that's
amazing.
Right. So, for me, there is, if you can capture with Zeno all of the decisions of why you're about to expense, then the process of expense should be fully automated, fully submitted, fully real-time reconciled, unless it's not within those parameters. So traditionally, travel approvals approve the travel, but if we can start to approve the entire journey and use AI to predict what the total spend would be and the tolerance of the approver and the division and the budgets within that, we start to create a model along with payment and auto reconciliation and receipt capture, that are all working together to take that whole pain point. And so I believe the next evolution is to destroy expense management as it exists today and actually have the travel side, which is what Zeno was designed for, to take all of that at the start and have that as a byproduct of a reconciliation process and an exception to the rule of where you're spending outside of that tolerance range. And so AI will help drive that whole process a lot better. So my vision for kind of the travel and expense is what I call T. People call it T&E. I call it TNE, travel and no expense, is the vision that I have for our industry. So it's travel and the rest of it's actually automatically done for us.
There you go, disrupting again. Break it again. No, that's awesome. Thank you so much for your time this morning, Darrin. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Thank you for coming on the show.